Okay, let's just double check. Make sure everything is good. All right. Okie dokie. All right, folks. I'm so very sorry for the delay. It's been a technologically interesting day. My apologies for that. That's not how I normally want to do this podcast, but sometimes that happens. So, my bad. My bad to everyone here. So very sorry. We are going to be just heading into make sure everything is okay here. Just want to make sure everything is okay. Everything is good. Yeah, very good. All right, well, we're going to get going. So, good afternoon to whoever you are, wherever you are. This is the UnShrink Me podcast, and I am Patrick Lockwood. Thank you so much for being here. I'm technically Dr. Patrick Lockwood, but for the purposes of this, I'll just be Patrick because please don't sue me. And so, for those of you who are brand new, this is a podcast all about mental health, the art and the science of psychotherapy and psychology and clinical psychology and things like that. The basic goal of UnShrink Me is to criticize the things that aren't so good about the mental health industry or the mental health industrial complex, which includes psychiatry, psychology, every degree level, every type of practice is up for criticism here. So this is not just me calling out a particular person, a particular industry. Mostly what I do here is I try to talk about the trending things online that relate to the art and science of psychology and mental health. So that is why we are here. And as always, without further delay, let's jump into it. Today's little podcast is focused on a number of very important topics. So just to go over a few of them, we're going to talk just a little bit about mental health. We're going to talk about AI like we did last week. And what else are we going to talk about? We are going to talk about, let's see, we're going to talk about some new research that came out. What else? We're going to talk about transference and countertransference. We got some fun stuff coming up. We got some really, really fun stuff. So let's see how this goes. And as always, not technically sponsored by my favorite energy drink company at this point, which is Celsius. So thank you so much. Unofficial, not sponsors. And if you're here, please say something in the chat, joke around, ask questions, argue. Everything is all good. So let's start with something that I said I was going to talk more about later in like 3 or 4 episodes ago, but I really, really want to spend some time on this today. So there's this person whom I've never heard of before, and I briefly mentioned her a couple of episodes ago, maybe 4 episodes ago. Her name is apparently Lori Gottlieb, and I will retweet this right now so you know who I'm talking about. So if you're on Twitter, my handle is @Dr. Lockwood. Feel free to come chat and see what I'm talking about. So Lori Gottlieb, about a month ago, went on the Andrew Huberman podcast, and she talked about essentially this thing she called idiot compassion. And I encourage you to go watch Andrew's podcast. He's a smart guy. He has interesting conversations. I think, honestly, frankly, worthwhile conversations. I don't have any particular gripes or anything of that nature with Andrew, other than some of the woo that he engages in, but like that's unavoidable when you're that big and you talk to that many people. Anyways, he had this lady named Lori Gottlieb on, who I've never heard of or met before, but she's a best-selling author of some kind. She's, I guess, a clinician of some kind, New York Times best-selling author and clinician. She's an MFT, apparently. That means a master's degree in marriage and family therapy, and I also teach at a university that creates MFTs, so I know very much about what her degree training is supposed to be like. Anyways, so Lori went on Andrew Huberman's podcast and talked about this thing called idiot compassion. And my general critique is, I want to be clear that I understand, I think, what she's trying to say, which is there are people who let their compassion get the best of them, and their compassion is actually making themselves and other people worse and sick. So this is sometimes called codependency in some circles, like the rehab circles. It's pretty common in ED, eating disorders treatment circles as well. And there's a number of versions of this concept. And here's the problem that I have with calling it idiot compassion, personally at least for me. Because for me, I think the problem with calling it idiot compassion, which I talked about in my tweet there, is when you call it idiot compassion, you're missing one important point at least, right? So one of the important points that's missing is these people aren't merely stupid. I think that when we use phrases like idiot compassion, which I don't have inherently a problem with, if that makes sense. But the problem that I face is if we lose, let's say, our focus on what's possible, right? Because here's what I'll say. People who are struggling with severe mental health problems, people who are struggling with various types of, personal problems, psychosocial problems, relationship problems, mental illnesses, the world around them typically reacts in a very predictable way, which is, oh my God, what's wrong? How can I help? Right? Because people see serious mental illness as a catastrophe of sorts, mostly because I think at least people that are close to them, family and romantic partners, they see the terrible consequences of severe mental illness on their loved one. And so they will catastrophize, and that's normal. And so when we catastrophize, we think that something catastrophic has happened, right? And the idea is, what do we do to solve the catastrophe? Well, it's all hands on deck. And so your most intense compassion instincts typically get, unearthed whenever you're catastrophizing, when it's about someone you love in danger. And so I don't think it's idiotic. I just think it's very primitive, which is different than calling someone stupid. I just think it's kind of our most base self, which we all have. It's not, it doesn't have anything to do with your intelligence or your ability to see like the complicated layers of a person. It's just you're a regular person who has regular intense feelings of fear, anger, empathy, whatever, that allows you to like catastrophize on behalf of this person you supposedly love. To me, that's not weird. What I think is weird is when you let that be the sole driving force behind your behavior. And so I would agree with her that, some people are certainly stupid and they let their compassion run their life because they are stupid. But I would argue that the vast majority of so-called like codependent parents or codependent romantic partners, spouses, friends that I've worked with in my professional life, they weren't stupid. Some of these people are very intelligent. It's just a matter of there's no intelligence that counteracts your emotions. Most people do not have the kind of resilience they need to their feelings because most people believe that their feelings are merely a consequence of some magical internal process and don't really understand their emotional process. Even the most intelligent people don't have a good relationship with their self-concept and their emotional process. And so I think idiot compassion only has to do with people who are intentionally trying to self-deceive, which is different than the people who are just garden variety typical people who don't know any better. I think you're only an idiot when you should know better. And that's very few people on the planet who should actually know better, because very few people are that self-aware. And I doubt that even people like Lori are that self-aware. I would be willing to bet that most people who talk about these things are not the most self-aware people. And if you don't believe me, just go check out most of these people's personal lives. Most of the so-called gurus online are miserable people. They're not doing that well. just easy, slim, easy pickings. Like Gabor Mate looks ill. He looks very, very ill. Same thing with, who's that famous lady who talks all about empathy and compassion and stuff? It'll come to me at some point. But all of these people aren't well. It's just, they're not well and they don't need to be well. They just want to be famous or something. And so maybe we should stop listening to best-selling authors and we should start listening to more reasonable people. But what would I know? All right. So idiot compassion, yeah, sort of. Compassion's useful, but it's got to have an upper limit, and you have to have a better relationship with your emotions and your motivations in order to use compassion effectively. All right. Next up, my friend, or one of my favorite online people who I'm at least friendly with, is Jonathan Shedler. I talk about him so far like once a week at this point. So, Jonathan, if you're out there, thank you so much for all that you do and the ways in which you've helped me with this podcast by just grist for the mill. So, just going to tweet about it real quick to give him the attention he deserves. So, Jonathan Shedler is a therapist, I think based out of San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken. And he is always talking about mental health and therapy-related things. And as always, we have a brand new topic, which I think is totally worth discussing. Excuse me. That's good shit. So, there are two words, transference and countertransference. And as always, Jonathan, just to be clear, has this really, I think it's a gift in how he describes things online, but it could just be my bias, obviously. So let me read his post. His post was from a couple of days ago. Let me get it right. Okay. 4/21. So a couple weeks ago. So his post was 4/21/25. Transference and countertransference, as the words are used in contemporary theory and practice, refer to the totality of the patient's experience of/reactions to the therapist, and the totality of the therapist's experience of and reactions to the patient, respectively. The concepts subsume thoughts, feelings, behavior, and somatic and visceral responses, conscious and unconscious. I think he was doing his best to define those two things. And not to get boring and pedantic about the history of these concepts from Freudian times up until now, but just to, again, the spirit of this podcast is to make more informed consumers. And so let me try to share some extra thoughts in addition to what Jonathan's talking about. So the reason that transference and countertransference are even words that you should care about, because if you or your loved ones are either seeking out therapy or have had therapy, these are concepts that I think are worth talking about. So there's this idea, right? So there's different schools of thought in therapy, none of which particularly matter for the purpose of this conversation. But just to be clear, certain thinkers in psychology believe that all that matters is your conscious, observable behavior, what you actually do, right? If I move my hand, what does that mean to you, right? And it's all the moving of the hand and what's it contingent on, what causes it, and what's the consequence of me moving my hand. Then there's other people, like the early psychodynamic people, who believed there's actually a rich inner mental life that we can't really directly observe, but we can speculate about. And something about this inner life matters more than just our behavior patterns. So the behaviorists think our behavior patterns are all that really matter. Can we reward and punish things contingently such that everything gets better? And then you got the psychodynamic people and the cognitive people who, although extremely different creatures, believe that something about how you consciously experience thoughts and your internal drives and motivations matters far more than just your behavior. And so the thing about transference and countertransference, so, just to go back to Jonathan's definition, transference is any thoughts, feelings, motivations, visceral reactions that the patient has to you, the therapist. And then countertransference are the thoughts, feelings, and visceral reactions the therapist has to the patient. And so let me just describe something that's extremely simple. So two of the more common types of transference that are experienced in therapy include like a mom and dad transference, where it's like the patient of maybe one gender experiences, like if it were me as the therapist, maybe I would have like a dad transference with them where I represent the male authority figure in their life. And so they're not just experiencing me as Patrick Lockwood, the psychologist, in the way that I specifically talk to them with my unique background and my mannerisms, but because of their experience with their dad as a kid and as a young adult, they're experiencing me through the filter of how their dad was to them. And so I am not just Patrick as my own unique individual. I am Patrick as seen through the lens of their dad, right? And then countertransference is where me as the therapist, I have the experience of the patient. I react to them because of my personal experiences, right? Because of my, transference, countertransfer, because of like my childhood. Like, let's just say I'm working with a patient who reminds me of my younger self, right? So I'll have some personal transference there. Or maybe I have a patient who I'm working with who's older than me, who is a male, and will remind me of my dad. And so I'll have some countertransference related to like seeing this patient like my dad, right? I'll experience them and have reactions to them that are more about how my dad would talk to me and treat me than about how they actually are their own unique self, different from my perceptions of my dad and the internal models of my dad in my head. So all that's very technical garbage to say we have personal reactions to people that are kind of like rose-colored glasses. They alter the way that we see people. And so here's the trick. If you're looking for therapy and you have serious mental health issues that you're trying to actually understand, if you're trying to understand yourself better, something you need to understand is that you're not actually experiencing reality in this raw vegan kind of way. One of the greatest lies that our conscious mind tells us is that everything we're experiencing is brand new and like raw and real. The truth of the matter is, at least to the extent that I understand this correctly, I think it's we don't actually experience real life in this raw vegan kind of way. Almost everything we're experiencing, all of our five senses, these are all memories. So we're actually technically projecting all day. We're not really having a raw, real experience with people. Our mind is confabulating. It's making up how we think we're supposed to feel in terms of temperature, sight, smells, sounds, memories, interpersonal experiences, everything. Our expectations actually drive our behavior more than what we're actually currently experiencing. So there's the stimulus that's happening. I'm being yelled at. I'm being flipped off, whatever it is. And so if I have 100,000 memories of being flipped off or seeing people flip each other off, it's those 100,000 memories that are priming me to react a certain type of way. So if 100,000 times I've been flipped off and it's been funny, then if someone else is flipping me off right now, then I'm only going to experience it as funny, even if they're angry at me. My brain is primed to experience it as funny. And so this funny feeling has nothing to do with the actual here and now circumstance. It has to do with the 100,000 times it's happened or I've seen it on TV in the past. And that's why countertransference and transference make sense. Because our brain is basically a big prediction machine that uses all of our memory and it fills in the gaps all day with a bunch of bullshit we make up. We don't actually experience the here and now as the here and now. That's why the mindfulness gurus make so much money. Because all of us are conditioned by our brain to experience something we've already experienced. Our brain is trying to use Carl Friston's work, the neuroscientist, conserve energy, reduce the surprise reaction. And so we're going to try and force fit our reality into what we've already experienced, which means we're not really here to have a new experience. That's why people love Tony Robbins. That's why people love all these The Secret kind of bullshit things, because most of us are on autopilot all day long. That's why people have profound experiences when they go on meditation retreats and silent retreats and stuff like that, because you're forced to be present and you're forced to turn off that predictive memory expectation machine that is your brain, how your brain normally functions. And so if you're having a new experience in therapy, it feels profound because it's violating some predetermined expectation pattern in your brain, right? Because your brain's operating in a transference, countertransference way basically all day with all people at all times. It's all memory. It's all prediction. It's not actually real here and now new stimuli. There's real here and now stimuli that are happening, but your brain is trying to force fit all the things you're currently experiencing into a past pattern. And that's why it's so important to be clear about what you're getting out of therapy. Because most of us are looking to just have what we already believe to be true about ourselves confirmed. And if you're going to a therapist and your therapist is just telling you what you want to hear, you have a bad therapist. You have a shitty therapist. Because for the most part, what you want to hear is not good for you. And it's not good for your mental health. Most of us do not have the kind of relationships we need to have where we can look at what we believe is true and have that challenged appropriately. Life is very complicated in many ways. The things that we're experiencing with our family and with our friends are extremely complicated. And any of our predetermined, like personality-driven or culture-driven or trauma-driven experiences in our brain are trying to bias us towards what we already believe is true. But the truth is not that simple. What we want to be true is what our prior experiences taught us is true. And here's what I'll tell you. If you want to live a good life, you've got two choices. This is based upon both my clinical experience, my experience of reading literature, practicing mindfulness, believe it or not. You got two choices. If you want to live a good life, you can do A, which is to live in autopilot. You can just not give a shit and you can be stupid and you can just not try. It's easier because you're never going to have to think and you're never going to have to try, but you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer because every time something new happens that violates your predetermined expectations, you're going to be miserable. But 90% of the time, because life is fairly predictable nowadays in our very comfortable modern lives, you'll be fine and you won't be miserable. But if you want to live an even better life, which is much more challenging, then you need to have experiences where you challenge your predetermined beliefs and what you believe to be true about yourself. Because almost always what you believe to be true about yourself is not correct. And so crappy therapists confirm what you believe is true about you. Good therapists of whatever kind examine things like transference and countertransference dynamics and try and figure out what the complicated reality actually is. Because reality is almost always at least three things. It's what you would like to be true. It's a combination of three things. That's what reality is in therapy. It's what you would like to be true. It's what you don't know is happening. And it's some middle ground between extremes. So what you would like to be true is something idealistic. So idealistically, I won't be depressed, or I'll have fewer trauma symptoms, or whatever it is, or I'll be free from distress, right? But then in between those extremes is like feeling horrible, feeling great. Is like, some days are good, some days are bad, so on and so forth. But the complicated dynamics of like, why are you distressed? Are you distressed just because of the antecedents and the behavior and the consequences? Or are you distressed because maybe your expectations suck? Are you distressed because maybe you learned something untrue about yourself, like you are fragile, right? Maybe you are stressed out and uncomfortable because maybe you're seeing reality clearly. Maybe you're deep in the middle of a terrible circumstance and it's correct for you to feel bad, right? And so it's a really complicated conversation. But then after that complicated conversation, the conversation gets really simple. So once you figure out why you feel the way you do, transference, countertransference, culture, trauma, personality, here and now stuff, what's actually happening, what your expectations are, and if they're valid or not, all of that, once you get through all of that, then the question is, what do you want to do about it? And that's real simple. You can be in acceptance, you cannot be in acceptance. And the question is, why are you not in acceptance? To me. Because Life is really hard. If you're living a good life, you're living a life where you're challenged. If you're trying to be healthy, you're actively taking on challenges that make you a better person in whatever way you would like to be a better person. And so I can't imagine that if you take yourself seriously, you would just ignore the transference reactions you have in therapy. If you believe that all you're having is a here and now experience, then you're full of it, because that just ignores everything we know about the brain and memory and neuroscience. Because everything we're experiencing in the here and now is colored by everything we've experienced prior to this point, including just 1 second ago. So it's impossible to just be fully present, I would argue. Maybe Sam Harris would think differently. Maybe other mindfulness meditator people would think differently. But I think our challenge is always talking realistically about why we feel the way we feel and then doing something productive with it. And most therapists suck at actually being honest about why we feel the way we feel, including the therapists themselves. Most therapists have all sorts of reactions to their patients and don't ever tell the truth about them, ever. So here's what I would say. If you're seeing a therapist and all they do is validate you, something is wrong. If you're seeing a therapist and all they ever do is say, no, you're right, then something is wrong. If you're seeing a therapist and they never talk about transference or why you're reacting the way you are, if they never ask generally good, open-ended questions about your expectations, you've got a bad therapist. And so your job should be to find someone who actually appropriately challenges you, helps you see things differently. Therapy is about creating new patterns, creating new expectations, increasing metacognition, and being more in alignment with your values. So your job is to see things differently and do things differently. Now that can happen quickly in some cases, and it can happen more slowly in others because maybe you have more going on, more stressors, less resilience, fewer coping skills, whatever it is. But it is possible to get better even with severe mental illness. And transference and countertransference is a big part of it. So find a therapist. If you're searching for a therapist right now, my encouragement to you is to actually ask them what they think about transference and countertransference. I think it's a great Rorschach test because it will tell you if they even care enough to actually think about themselves and think about you and all the complicated layers that you are and that you have. So, just my shtick. All right. Speaking of bad life coaches, actually, I don't know if this person's a life coach, but there's this person named Dr. Nicole LaPera. And I'm going to tweet about her right now so you know exactly who I am talking about. Okay, Dr. Nicole LaPera. Who is she? She's like a holistic healer person. I don't know. She's got 1 million followers. God bless her. Anyways, so she posted this on 4/24/25. She said, depression is a response, not a disorder. We have to stop medicalizing natural human emotions and instead teach people how to deal with them. So this is some beautiful clickbait garbage that unfortunately I fell prey to, so I at least should talk about it. I said, no, sadness is a response. Depression is an illness. Here's the deal, folks. Obviously, there are ways in which we use words which confuse people. And so it's always fucking stupid when people like Dr. LaPera or whoever she is say things like this because she's conflating depression and sadness. So either she means A, depression's not a real illness in any way, shape, or form. There's no such thing as major depressive disorder, which if that's what she's believed, she's an idiot. Or B, she's misusing the word depression to mean sadness. So here's the truth. Sadness is a real thing that we all experience, sometimes daily, sometimes situationally, whatever, right? There's dozens of good reasons to be sad. Loss, accidents, guilt, shame, confusion, things that happen, memories. There's so many good, sad music. There's so many good reasons to be sad. And then there's depression, which is a clinical syndrome which has a variety of symptoms and various causes, genetics and all these things. And so depression's a complicated illness that has a prevalence of around 5 to 6%, roughly speaking, that is treatable and manageable, but in the more severe cases, not really curable per se, but manageable, because most people with most mental health conditions learn how to manage them more effectively. Now, to be fair, there's a lot of people that think that they have a diagnosable illness like depression, when in reality they have a bad case of what I call LSD, which is life sucks disorder. You've created a shitty life by not exercising, not having honesty in relationships, not having principles that you stick to, not treating yourself with respect, and so your life sucks, which is not the same thing as depression. So there's LSD, which is not the same thing as major depressive disorder. Then there's also like grief, which is not the same thing as depression. Then there's also like you're experiencing just a shitty circumstance, which is not the same thing as depression. Or there's also like, I made a bad decision, like I'm in graduate school and my life is very stressful. And so you've got all this stress and you're kind of burnt out. Burnout is not depression, even though some of the ways that you conceptualize burnout looks like depression. And so like there's burnout, there's grief, there's life sucks disorder, and there's like garden variety sadness that happens whenever you are, trying to like deal with your life. None of those things are depression. Major depressive disorder is not any of those things I just listed. So Dr. LaPera, what the hell? What the hell is your problem? You're not helping. You're making things more muddy. Maybe leave it to the clinical psychologist. Like, what are you doing? Anyways, so depression is not a response. We should medicalize things that are actually medical syndromes. What are you doing? Stop conflating sadness, burnout, grief, life sucks disorder with depression. You are not helping. Shame on you. Super fun post. I'm just going to retweet it right now. Not going to say much about it. So there's a post that came out. There's I guess a study. And I just retweeted it. It said 25% of community college applicants in California are now AI bots. Scammers enroll the bots in online courses long enough to get money from Pell Grants. Welcome to the future. This guy's name is Alec Stapp. AlecStapp. This was 6 days ago. So apparently, the scammers are using bots to enroll in community college and get money. Love that. As if the college education system wasn't screwed up enough and scammed enough. All right. Here we go. Jonathan Cogburn, whose handle on Twitter is called Systemic Texism, Texism. I guess he's from Texas. I'm just going to tweet about it real quick. Okie dokie. So 5 days ago, Systemic Texism was responding to a tweet about how all research that's publicly funded should be open and accessible to the public. And Jonathan said, especially where public funding was used to pay for the research. And then bonus question for the podcast, he said to me. Where egregious errors or intentional negligence was done in the design process, leading to lack of replication, should public funds be paid back or some form of direct consequence? So he's talking about, should academics who intentionally commit fraud, they are just shitty in designing their study when they know it's not going to replicate, or they make serious errors accidentally, should they either pay the money back that they were given by the NIH or whatever, or should there be some consequence? So I guess, Jonathan, the problem with paying things back is that you're going to bankrupt a lot of universities. And then the other question is, by what criteria do you judge? How are you telling if either the serious error happened? And how do you tell if it's intentional fraud? Because, at least in my experience in academia for the last 8 years, it's really hard to tell if some people are just lazy, or if they're stupid, or if they're ignorant, or if they have bad mentors. Because I can just tell you my experience teaching PsyD students and MFT students that they have had a variety of types of mentors and professors over the course of my time here. And some of them are excellent, and then we've had a few bad apples. And so, excuse me, I think the bad apples are part of the problem, and there's nothing you can do about that, unfortunately. But then the challenge we face is if those bad apples are on their dissertation committee and they're helping them get published, the university is at fault for sure, but do you ask for all that money back because they hired a bad apple and maybe they didn't know it, or maybe they had no other options, right? Like, the university system is extremely complicated. As someone who currently works in the university system, let me tell you, it's a messy, complicated system. It's really messy. And what I will tell you is that hiring and firing is really complicated, especially when you have like very slender budgets, to say it politically. You can't always hire the people you want to hire. The problem with the universities, especially in the graduate psychology world, or one of the many problems is, pickings are slim. A lot of the people that want to get grant funded tenure track jobs, they don't go to the universities that are turning out the most clinicians and researchers. They go to R1 schools where they got a cushy job potentially, and they get to just publish something their mentor is publishing. And they kind of have not an easy, but they have a more direct route to being successful compared to these private professional programs. So I think we have a complicated money problem that is not going to be easy to systemically punish. But maybe as opposed to taking the money back, we punish them in other ways. Like maybe they don't get future funding if there is a track record of fraud or something of that nature. So that's one possible solution. I think another possible solution is we just got to, have more accountability in the university in the first place. I think departments should do more withholding of tenure and things like that from people who have had fraud. And I think there should be more public, outrage. It's amazing how much fraud exists in the American Psychological Association. The APA should feel great shame for promoting people like Philip Zimbardo, who was president at one point, and all the torture that they co-signed in Guantanamo Bay. There's very little public reckoning for the horrible things that the APA has done on behalf of itself. And I think until accountability starts at the top, it's not going to funnel out into the university system, because they're just going to keep trying to make money. Because that's what universities do now. Universities don't teach people. Universities are about making money. And that's a problem. And until we can reconcile that and restore education back to what it was supposed to be, which is teaching people how to think and do good in the world, like I talked about, last week on the podcast, I think we're in trouble. And I think that there's no amount of punishing by removing money that's actually going to solve the problem. It's just going to punish the kids because the administrators are not paying attention the right way to actually, take the punishment the correct way, in my opinion. All right. Let's talk about perhaps one of the more dystopian things I've ever seen in my life. So once upon a time, little backstory before I get into this next post I'm going to talk about. Once upon a time, I wrote an article for my friend Dr. David Lay. David Lay is a psychologist out of New Mexico who has a blog on Psychology Today, so check him out. He's got some really cool posts there that are worth reading about various topics. And he asked me to talk about the loneliness epidemic back in the day, years ago, around the pandemic. So here's the deal. For decades, people have been talking about loneliness in a modern society, a highly industrialized society, a highly corporatist, greedy society. It's been talked about for a very long time. And it's true. There's a lot of people who self-report feeling lonely. And something I said in this blog is there's a difference between feeling lonely and being lonely. Some people can feel lonely in a crowded room full of people that care about them, which is wildly different than actually being lonely. And so I'd like to actually spend some time on this because I think this speaks to a number of things that therapy can address, but also culture and society can think about differently. And this may be, I don't know where this is going to go necessarily. I don't have a lot of pre-planned thoughts for this. It's just, I think it's a super important topic because I think it speaks to so many issues that intersect all at once. So let me get to the post, and then I will get back to my thoughts on loneliness. So here's the post. And let me tweet about this right now just to make sure. Okay, so here's the deal. So the post is from this Roman helmet guy 3 days ago. So his actual literal handle is at Roman, Roman, Helmetgui, Roman helmet guy. So he's posting this video of Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, Facebook, whatever. Zuckerberg is saying how Meta is creating personalized AI friends to supplement your real ones. The quote is, "The average American has 3 friends but has demand for 15. So everyone that's reacting to this, or not everyone, but a lot of people are having this same shared experience, it seems, which is, holy fuck, they're trying to commoditize friendships. Because even the phrasing is demand, supply and demand, which is a business economics way of looking at things, which is, Mark Zuckerberg said, the average American, oh, lost it. Sorry. Let me get it back. Let me get the quote back so I say it correctly at least. The average American has 3 friends, but has demand, like economic supply and demand, for 15. So here's why this is not good. Here's why this is a very fucked statement, to be clinical about it. Here's the problem. So is it true that maybe people don't have the same number of friends? I don't know what the data says. I really don't. I could speculate wildly, and what a waste of time that would be. Here's the truth. The truth is we need people, right? We badly, badly need people. In fact, and I don't know if I'm going to find this. I'm going to try and bring up this quote if I can, because it's a really great quote. But, don't cancel me for the quote. You know what I mean? So I was listening to this podcast, this Joe Rogan podcast, and, okay. Joe Rogan said the other day, community is like a vitamin, right? And so, just to speak to this loneliness thing. So people are social creatures. Every one of us needs people. Even if you're temperamentally created to be very introverted, that's who you are, you still need people. You need different types of people in different doses, but you need people. And he said community is like a vitamin. Joe Rogan's correct about that, because you certainly, most people, myself included, do not place the appropriate amount of value, to be economical about it, on the relationships they have, and we take them for granted. And I think we take them for granted for dozens of reasons. Insecurity and fear. I think culture war bullshit and politics. I think, because we have instantaneous, easy supply, easy access to people online through social media, I think some people, I don't know what percentage, but some slice of the population takes their real life relationships for granted because they can just go to Instagram and go to Twitter and all these things and just find cheap and easy fake community, right? So I think Joe's right. Community is like a vitamin, but just like with real vitamins, there are some vitamins that suck and are mostly garbage and you mostly pee them out. And then there are highly bioavailable, good for you vitamins that actually do what they're supposed to do. So there's like crappy vitamin C, and there's like good vitamin C that actually does get into your system and do what it needs to do. Same thing's true with community. There's really shitty community like online. And I'm not saying that online's all bad. I'm just saying that like online community is like Cheez-Its. And I love Cheez-Its, just so we're clear. I really, really do. Just like I love fucking around on Twitter and stuff. Like it's a type of community, but it's faux community. The technical term is a parasocial relationship. It's not a real relationship, but it's like a real relationship. The problem with that is that because it's a faux relationship, or a Cheez-It is a fake calorie, it doesn't actually have the nutrients you need. Speaking of fake calories, because it doesn't have the nutrients you need, you think you're getting the nutrients you need, but you're not. So you're still unfulfilled. And so when Zuckerberg's like, well, the average person needs 15 friends, but they only have 3. And so what we'll do is we'll create a bunch of AI friends. Holy fuck. That's not good. Do not have AI friends. That's a terrible idea. I am telling you, you can cancel me for this. I don't care. Do not have AI friends. That's the most dystopian, terrible thing on the planet. Don't do it. Mark Zuckerberg, you disgusting human being, don't. That's terrible. And the reason that's terrible is because you need real people. We are not designed to be psychologically stable because of parasocial relationships. We are primitive, stupid creatures who only feel important when we have real face-to-face experiences. How many people were losing their minds because they were locked up during the pandemic? They were losing their minds because they were trapped and they couldn't hang out with people. All these kids. There's a high school that I go give talks at like once or twice a year. And every one of the school counselors there told me right after the pandemic was the first time I gave a talk there, that all the kids were developmentally very regressed socially because they had like at least a year off of being around people. So they regressed. It's terrible. It is horrible to try to have only parasocial relationships. If 3 of your 15 friends are real and the other 12 are fake AI bullshit, that's terrible. That's terrible for you. That's terrible for your mental health. Do not have AI friends. Go meet real people. Do you have social anxiety disorder? Guess what you're supposed to do? Exposure therapy. You're supposed to go be around people. The solution is to go have healthier, real relationships. What's that bullshit saying? The opposite of addiction is connection? Real connection. That's why AA works for most people who actually try it. It works because they have real relationships that are tangible, that mean something. They have shared principles. They have shared experiences. There's a sense of accountability. There's a sense of purpose. There's a sense of understanding that's not some AI bullshit. There's nothing that you're going to get from AI relationships that is going to help you. It is just a terrible Band-Aid that's set to make AI rich. That's set to make Meta and all these companies rich. And we should all be terrified. I'm not normally the fear porn guy, but for this particular purpose, as a guy who works in the mental health industry, I will tell you that, feel free to take my job, AI. What the fuck ever. I'll do something else. But in reality, if we're going to destroy relationships by creating AI friends, like that movie Her or whatever, this is terrible for everybody. No one is going to come out ahead except for the greedy oligarchs who run these tech companies. And you're all idiots if you think this is a good thing. This is a terrible thing. And I would love to talk to someone who actually thinks this is a good thing, and you would have to work really hard to convince me this is actually good for people. This is dystopian as hell. You should never forego real relationships for parasocial relationships. For every number of minutes you spend online, you should be spending double that with real people. One of the gifts of my profession in the treatment industry and in higher education is I get to be around people all day. I'm forced to talk to people all day. That's a blessing. If you have the ability to be around people, your life is good. You may be around shitty people, but that's better than being around fake people. And so parasocial relationships are bad for you and your mental health. Emphasizing fake people online is bad. 80% of Twitter is bots. Instagram is mostly bots. Like, holy crap. Do not have AI relationships. Please do not have a relationship with ChatGPT or Grok or whatever. It's a toy. It's a tool. And if you make that tool a person, you are fucked. And society could be fucked if this takes off. I'm not normally the fear porn type, but this scares the daylights out of me. Because as a mental health professional, as a professor, as someone who just generally understands how humans work and is effective in helping people, this is anti-helping people. This is not even enabling. This is destroying basic human relationships for the sake of money. And this is terrible. And so I think in the entire time that I've done this podcast and all my other YouTube videos years back, I don't think I've ever been this concerned. I wasn't even this concerned during the pandemic. I just thought we were acting stupidly on a short-term basis because of a crisis. That's completely different than this. This is these tech oligarchs who just have no real relationship to what their technology is going to do to society. He didn't know what Facebook was going to do. He said that. He admitted that. This is a guy who constantly creates supposedly cool shit that is worsening society in so many ways, including Facebook and things like that. We need more real relationships. The coolest fucking thing is going out and hanging out with people. Just to tell a very quick story, some of the people that I work with randomly came by my house last night, and they were just trying to prank me and mess around with me, and it was so cool. And the reason it was so cool is because they cared about me enough to come fuck with me and like try to prank me. That's a privilege. That's an honor. It's a good thing that real people want to spend time with me. And if we take for granted the real people in our lives, we are in trouble. Almost everyone who is very ill has very shitty real relationships. You need more real relationships that actually build you up and encourage you and support you and guide you. And AI can't do that. It cannot. It will never be able to do that. Because just like porn isn't the same thing as sex, porn is the band-aid for sex that's missing. Likewise, AI relationships are the band-aid for, relationships that are missing. So go make more friends. Please, for the love of God, make more friends. Eat good food. Go have good food with good friends. These are all super easy, simple things that will change the quality of your life. Sharing a meal with friends, sharing a meal with family, sharing a meal with romantic partners, doing these rituals with people is good for your mental health. And that's not some shit you learn in CBT or ACT or psychodynamic therapy. Go do the simple things that are good for your well-being. Because if you don't, you're missing out. Life is not about being rich. It's not about being famous. I don't know what it's about, to be honest, but it's not about those things. And I cannot tell you the number of times I've had patients and people in my personal life who rediscovered the so-called simple things and learned to make them the appropriate amount of important, like working out, sleeping, drinking enough water, eating the right kinds of food, spending time with people they love, joking around, having sex, all the things that matter, literally. And when they started to prioritize those things, everything in their life got better. My friend Xavier says, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. For sure. Go do the good shit. Forrest Gump was correct. Forrest Gump was a simpleton, right? Like, Forrest Gump literally had the secret. He figured it out. Prioritize the shit that matters, which is people, right? The whole moral of the story is Forrest Gump prioritized people that cared about him. His mom, Jenny, Lieutenant Dan, his friend, I forget the guy, the black guy, I forget his name. Like, he cared about people. He cared about doing the right thing. And he was stupid, but he had the best possible life. And he, like to be all Jordan Peterson about it, he had an adventure. right? Because he cared about people. He cared about the right things. He had the right priorities. And that is what is missing. And these fucking AI friend things that Mark Zuckerberg's talking about scare the ever-loving shit out of me. I'm calling it. I'm admitting it. I am in fear about this one thing. I'm in fear about I'm not in fear about most things because most shit is just stupid passing fancies and passing trends. So who the fuck cares? But like this whole AI friend thing that Zuckerberg's talking about should scare you and force you to go out and hang out with people. Like you need to go spend time with people. Spending time with people is good for your mental health. Even if you're not temperamentally very extroverted, go spend more time with people. You are not going to suffer. You're not going to be more mentally ill because you're choosing to have more fun with your friends or your family or your spouse. Maybe pull your head out of your ass and go be better friends to your spouse if you're having relationship issues. Or pull your head out of your ass and be a better friend. Or a better son or husband or whatever. Like, your life matters. And because it matters, if you don't treat the things seriously, if you don't take seriously the things that actually make your life better, you're a fool. And this whole AI friend thing is the commoditizing and the disenfranchisement of real relationships. And the people that hate rich people and the people that hate corporate greed should be up in arms about Mark Zuckerberg doing these AI friend things. Like, this is horrible. It is absolutely horrible because it is devaluing real people and making him rich for creating fake people. Not good. All bad. Black and white thinking is generally bad. This is one of those bad things. Fake friends, bad. Real people, good. Go to church. Go play a sport. Go to the gym. Go hang out with people. Go hang out with your friends. Go hang out with your family. Do not sit alone in your room and scroll fucking Instagram. Go be with people. You don't feel like being with people? Too bad. Go do it. Because it's better for your health and it's better for your mental health. It is not better for your health to sit there and stare at a screen or talk to ChatGPT. How absurd that this like primitive brain and body is good to just fucking sit here all day. That's why school sucks. Because kids are told to just sit there. It's stupid. And so what we need to do is we need to get back to the basics that actually work. Right? You need to do the things that actually keep you sane and keep you healthy. And good relationships keep us sane. And good lifestyle habits keep us healthy. None of which includes sitting on your... Doing this all day is not good for you. This is terrible for you. The fact that I even do it now is bad role modeling, but what the fuck ever, right? Like, not good for you. So, anyways, that is my rant. Fuck Mark Zuckerberg and his AI friends. That's my very political, professional statement for the day. That's terrible for everyone. Nobody is better off. This greedy, corporatist, dystopian bullshit should not stand. People should be revolting in the streets. Revolting in the streets. This should be like they're poisoning our water level revolting in the streets. So, anyways. So, this has been yet another enlightening episode of UnShrink Me. Thank you for those of you who came out and watched. Please like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate you trying to help me get the science of mental health out there. And again, the whole spirit of this podcast is just to create a more informed consumer base so that if you are going to avail yourself of the services of a psychiatrist or psychologist or LMFT or LPCC or a counselor or whatever, or, you know, a Christian pastor counselor or whatever, like, please, 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 please share this podcast to anyone and everyone who thinks they have mental health issues, who need some guidance, because my job is to just give people a realistic, rational perspective on the problems with the industry, what to look out for, what to watch out for, what to like, what not to like. That's actually good for you getting what you need from these professionals. Because the professionals are lost. This profession is falling apart. The APA is not keeping us in good shape. Universities are mixed in terms of how good the education is for future clinicians. So let me tell you, my only job, my only goal with this podcast is to make people more informed consumers of mental health services with some rants here and there. So anyways, thank you again for coming out, liking, sharing, and subscribing. I apologize for the little bit of a delay. We'll get that worked out so it looks better next week. And as always, I like to end my podcast with a dad joke. And so here we go. So I was talking to one of my colleagues in the profession, and he was telling me about this couple he was working with, and the wife was a plant lover, and the husband was a canine lover. He really liked dogs. And he was trying to think of, like, you know, they'd worked together for a year. They went through some really difficult stuff, and he was maybe thinking of like getting them a symbolic gift, which you don't really get gifts for people, but sometimes you do. And, you know, because she loved trees and plants and stuff like that, and he loved, you know, dogs, he was thinking like maybe I should get them a plant of some kind. I was like, oh, that's kind of a nice gesture, not too expensive or anything. It doesn't seem like inducement or some other legal problem. And we were talking about it, and I was like, you know what? I think I have the right idea of what you get for this plant lover, dog lover couple. And he looked at me and said, what? What kind of things should I get them? And I said, maybe you should get them a dogwood. All right. Thanks for coming out. See you next week. Please like, share, and subscribe, and take care of yourself. Take very, very good care